Happy Sunday, everybody, and welcome back to another video. We are going to be doing our quote-unquote Sunday special, where basically I talk about the markets and I share my personal trade ideas or trade concepts that I'm looking forward to this coming week. Now, I've got a couple different markets at the bottom of the screen that you can see. In case you want to skip ahead, we're going to be doing things like gold, the pound, and we're going to even finish off with New Zealand dollar and pound. I'm sorry, New Zealand yen and pound yen today. So if those sound interesting to you, you can skip ahead if you would like. But let's go ahead and dive into it. Actually, one more thing before we do get into that, let me also mention that we do have something kind of exciting happening inside of the group. Now, we actually just added someone new to our analyst team. Now, if you're not familiar with how the A1 trading community works, all of us are different analysts from around the world. Myself and Frank are in the US session. We have Eddie and Bart in the European session, and we just added a new person named Joe. And some of you guys might actually know Joe. He is joining our team. He's pretty well known in the community of foreign exchange. Very, very experienced trader and coach. And he's going to be joining our group and also doing webinars for members. So this is really, really exciting for us. This allows me that's the whole point of the community, is to allow people to assist us with the different staff members to make this community the best it can be. So we've got chat rooms, trade alerts, and now we're adding webinars to the membership. And for now, the price has not gone up. If this is something that's interesting to you, check the link down below in the description if you would like to join us. Again, you get access to all of the chat rooms, the trade alerts, and the free, or not the free, but the VIP webinars that are going to be going live inside of the group. So with that said, again, link down below in the description if you are interested in joining that. Let's dive into the analysis for this week, though, and see what we can get ourselves into. Of course, for those of you guys who are members watching this, I will be sharing any sort of trades that I actually end up taking inside of the group. So euro dollar is going to be our first one today. And check this out, guys. Euro dollar really took off in the upward direction again. Which actually, if we go back to our concept that we talked about for a while, I was expecting this to actually come down a little bit more. I was hoping for a deeper pullback. So I didn't get long on euro dollar. I do have a long on euro yen right now, which is also doing well. However, I was really hoping to see if we could get a pullback to a bigger structure longer term, such as this level here, right around that 1.14 level, which may have lined up nicely with that 200-day moving average. Now, when we look at euro dollar now, we do actually see that we came down, we saw the pullback here, and what looks to be a nice little kind of structure here forming in terms of a upward trend line. And it depends how you draw it. This doesn't really look too promising, but you can see, for example, we were uptrend here, we broke to the downside, and that was my initial thesis for why I thought we could actually go lower. But we found support here for whatever reason. Maybe there was some sort of fundamental news that came out. But for the most part, regardless, we do see euro dollar on an upward move. Now, on the 4-hour chart, we really can see this, because check this out. On the 4-hour chart, let's zoom this over just a bit. If we actually draw this trend line to the downside, what you can see is, check this out. We had pretty bearish holding along the way here along this trend line. Every time price came near this level, we saw sellers kind of step in, until recently here on Friday and Thursday of last week, we saw the really big run up start here on euro dollar, and we actually broke and closed significantly above that downward structure. That to me is incredibly bullish, and we have to remember that, again, on that daily chart, we are still in the context of a strong bullish trend on Euro USD. So to me, it seems pretty plausible that we could actually see some movement to the upside. To me, one of the biggest things I try not to do ever in my trading is to just avoid fighting the trend, because if you sit here and you try and fight this trend, it can turn ugly really quickly. I actually had a Euro USD short that went against me, and I dealt with it. I did not have tight stops on this particular trade. I have strategies that use stops and strategies that do not. And one of the most painful trades of 2020 was having to cut a trade that had gone against me to the upside on Euro USD. However, I don't believe in being stubborn with the markets or not being able to adjust. And so now we've adjusted to a bullish uptrend, right? Because we see these moving averages moving bullish, right? They're clearly in an uptrend. Now, that could mean that Euro USD could very easily head right back up to the previous highs. And so potentially, I would like to position myself to take advantage of a market that starts to do something like that. So in that case, we've got supportive structure here. So what I like here on this a little bit more, maybe even the 1 hour chart, right? This previous pivot zone might actually be an area to consider ideas for pullbacks in my view. So if we were to see the market here come back a little bit, right? Looking for price to pull back and set up for a setup here could be a nice little trade. Now we also have a little bit of a shorter term on the 1 hour chart here, trend line here. This could actually be a good way to position a stop loss in my view. So let's say that I take a buy trade at the previous pivot here, the pullback. If price pulls back and we buy into this market here, it could be reasonable to look for a stop somewhere underneath this trend line. That gives us, let's just say we got in right here for whatever reason. Let's say we get right here. That gives us about a 40 pip stop loss, just roughly. And the upside here is actually quite a bit, because if we zoom out, if price were to head back to the previous high, that would be a significant move, right? You can actually see that that move would be a total of like 180 pips or so. So if that were to actually play out, that could be massive if this bullish trend just decides to get going. Now, there's other places to look for potential take profits. And if you're a person that likes to put multiple targets, you have an area like this, you have an area like this, right? This kind of zone right here actually looks pretty interesting. This zone being kind of a multiple top before we sold to the downside there. So if price were to come up there, that may be an area to at least consider taking partial profits. For those of you who like to do that, that might be an idea. But then again, the bigger picture to me would be, if this trend really wants to continue, it should actually be able to get back up to that 1.2 level. So if that were to be the case, there could be some really good upside on some bullish setups here, and waiting for a minor pullback could be my favorite play here. So I will be on the lookout for that this week on euro dollar. Again, I currently have a euro yen trade on that is doing quite well. So going to be managing that, and also keeping an eye on euro dollar as kind of reference, since those two will often move together. Okay. So let's move on to the next one here. We'll take a look at pound dollar, which also shot off here on Thursday and Friday. You can see there's the 4 hour chart. And we also have kind of a nice bullish structure here as well. We got this trend line forming, and we also have the breakout of a key zone here. I actually think that pound dollar may even look better than euro dollar on the bullish side in my view. Now, this one actually has an even more clearly defined, and just based on looking at it, I think I like this setup more than euro dollar. So let me elaborate. So we have this resistance zone that we were failing above, right? Price was not able to get above it. And you can actually see, look at these big red candlesticks. When price came up to those levels, just heavy selling every time we came up, right? So when we actually got to there on Friday and shot right past that level, that looks very, very bullish for the pound. Okay, you can actually see, look at these green candles. Very, very strong. In fact, look at the way this candle closed. We closed right at the top of the candle. That tells me that there was strong buy pressure this entire time, right? Buyers were just pushing this market up all the way into the close, which tells me that it very well could be more bullishness to come here for the pound dollar, right? I like to keep it simple. Generally speaking, if candles are green, I'm looking for buys, and if candles are red, I'm looking for sells. I know that's incredibly simple, but it's kind of true. The trend can be your friend, right? So as we pull back here each time, you can actually see buyers step in, they buy, right? And so that is a potential pattern that I'd be trying to get involved with. So what I mean by that is similar to euro dollar. If we see the pullback here coming into this next week, there might be room for a buy setup here that actually gives us a very clearly defined stop loss level in my view, which is underneath this structure. Again, very, very upward biased structure. If price were to break that significantly, I would probably want to be out of that trade. So to me, the buy is on the retest there. The stop would probably be somewhere underneath structure. Of course, I would have to reevaluate when the candles actually start moving there as to where would be a fair, stop level. But generally speaking, I'm looking underneath this trend line. And the upside here on the pound dollar is also very, very large because, again, if we zoom out, you can actually see we are pretty far from those highs, and we are in an overall uptrend on the pound dollar, right? We're above the 200, we're above the 20 on the daily chart. So with that said, if price were to actually get going, right? If we were to buy our pullback there, the upside to the previous high is 490 pips in this case, a lot more than the pound dollar, which was 180 if you remember. So there is a lot of upside, I think, on the pound dollar. Again, I'm not telling you what you should do with your money. I'm telling you just my personal opinions. But the idea here is that if this trend continues, I like the idea of positioning myself for a long-based setup, hoping that we can, or looking for the trend to just continue. We've got the clean breakout. We've got a pretty clearly defined stop level so that if I'm wrong, I can stop out of this trade with minimal damage. And if I'm right, we could actually see a move to the upside there. Again, 400 and whatever pips, quite a bit of upside. So that's what I'm looking at this week going into the pound dollar. Let's take a look at the dollar yen. Dollar yen on a down push here. Now, dollar yen, I don't know, it's been such a strange currency pair for the last several months. Now, if you go back, the dollar yen was a very different vehicle in 2018, right? 2018, you can see there's some pretty clearly defined trends, right? We're up, we're down, we're down, we're up, right? You've got some pretty clearly defined trends. But here in 2020, it's been just a steady, slow downtrend, which is a very weird market to be trading in. So every time price comes up, there is this kind of downward continuation pattern. And we actually see price kind of respecting that still to this day. And so there very well may be more downside. Again, I do like a general short on the US dollar right now personally. So if price wants to keep going lower, there very well may be a retest of these lows that we saw back in September. And that might be the trade there. In fact, a sell here with stops above structure, right? Something like this with a sell, even just selling into that engulfing candle right there, or what kind of looks to be one, we have a pretty decent risk reward. That means if price were to come all the way down, 165 pips of profit, risking about 90, 99, let's say 100 pips. So not the worst trade setup ever there either. And if you were trading the way I trade, what would probably be what I would do is if I was shorting this, right? If I sold this market, I would probably put a stop above structure. And I would see if price wants to come down, I would not stop. I would not take profit here. I would actually let the trade keep going. And that's just a personal way that I trade, is I use trailing stops as my dominant strategy, meaning if price moves in my favor, I'm just going to trail the stop up with the price. In that case, the cool thing is that if price breaks through these lows, it could keep going, right? We could actually see the down kind of explosion, if you will, really move lower. And if that were to be the case, that could be a huge winner. Some of my best trades are trades like that, where they just go absolutely crazy in one direction, and I just keep trailing my stop. If you've watched my live trading videos, you know that is one of my favorite kind of strategies. Voice crack. Now, gold is actually another one that is a great candidate for that sort of concept. Because if you're familiar with gold, then you know that sometimes we get moves like this where we just explode in one direction. And that's very cool, because if you catch that move early and you're in that trade and you're trailing stops, it can be game changing for an account. Just with small, tight risk management and letting a trade really go crazy in your favor, that can be huge and one of my favorite concepts. Now, gold looking super bullish right now because we broke through two major levels here. We broke through this supportive structure turned resistance, and we broke through this downward trend line. So to me, gold is bullish right now, and again, the dollar is bearish. So along what you're going to see across the board here with what my analysis has been, it's been a bias towards shorting the dollar in favor of something else, right? The euro, the pound, gold, right? So that's kind of my bias right now, is being short biased on the dollar longer term. So that is kind of what I'm looking out for. Gold, very similar to pound dollar and euro dollar, the retest, looking for concepts to re-enter this. To me, look pretty good with stops that make sense. Those are some things that I am looking out for this week. And again, for those of you guys who are members inside of the community, I will be sharing all the details, my entries, exits, all of that sort of stuff, so that you can hopefully get an idea of my thoughts there. With that said, let's talk about pound yen. Pound yen really broke higher here, which is a kind of a crazy move for this bullish trend, because you can see we've got this bullish trend, and this level here was kind of like our ceiling, right? This was our ceiling where we saw every time price came up, we got sellers come in here pretty sharply. But this time, the market said, nope. The market said, it's time to break through that ceiling, raise the roof, we're going higher. Okay, and that's what happened here on pound yen last week. And actually, funny enough, also New Zealand yen. Very similar story here. You can see on the 4 hour, actually maybe the 1 hour chart is best. You can see we did get a push higher above the previous ceiling, which is bullish, right? Which means I think that both of these have opportunities to keep going. So again, what you're going to see is the pattern of my analysis is usually I'm going with the trend. I'm looking for concepts that show strong signs of continuation in a momentum-driven market. When we see pound yen, same concept as the other ones. Now, the stop loss is a little bit trickier here because if I was to buy right here, my stop could actually be relatively large because that trend line is pretty far away from price. So there's a couple ways I guess you could look at it. Another way that I like is looking for that trend retest, right? If price were to come down to that point, that gives you a little bit more clearly defined stop loss to consider. Again, stopping out there, putting a buy trade, something like this. I like that concept personally, and I think that that has some potential to just continue with that trend with a relatively, kind of moderate stop loss distance. So that's a trade that I'm personally considering or going to be looking at. Again, if I take the trade, I will be sharing it inside of the group. Now, let's take a look finally at New Zealand yen with just a little bit more time here. You can see this concept very, very simple. This zone here, which previously was a heavy resistance area, we broke through that level. You can actually see we tried to sell. The market tried to push down. You can see that red candle, but then buyers just said, nope, it's time. We're going higher. And to me, a retest of this zone to me is probably one of my favorite sort of setups because it's a clean break in an uptrend at a previous level of resistance, looking for buying support with a stop underneath structure somewhere would make sense to me. So those are my setups for the week, guys. Hey, do me a favor. If you like these videos, make sure to give it a thumbs up down below. Subscribe to the channel if you want more free content, and we'll see you back next time. I hope you guys have a great week. Stay safe and trade safe as well.